We're on air now. Could you can leave the studio. That's the engineer as well. She should know about such things, surely.
Well, I quite like that, though. I quite like that ad hoc way that it's all done.
Yeah, but this is radio too. We're not on college radio now.
Yeah, well, someone will come
We're
in
not on Aberystwyth Radio.
Someone will come in and start putting shelves up in a minute.
And we'll get the emails in from Aberystwyth Radio in a minute. From the local college campus. Terry Hall is here as well as Mushtaq, because you know it's Asian Rap Day today.
Oh, God, is it?
You've really put some effort into that. You two look like the phrase is normally employed is drug through a hedge backwards with loads of alcohol being pumped into you at the same time.
It's dumber and dumberer.
Terry, you've aged about 1,000 years since I last saw you. You look. You know the end of. You know at the end of She when she walks back into the flame. You look a bit like. What's happened to you?
I've been dragged through a hedge backwards every day for the last 6 months.
Do you want me to play another record? Because
there's beauty inside.
Okay, no, I don't mind about that, but your language skills aren't always, tip top. Or your communication skills, particularly.
No, quite retired.
See?
Terry's got issues.
I've got issues.
We've more or less.
I think we've done it now. I think we've got everything about the album we need.
Thank you very much for coming in.
It's been lovely to see both of you, and Asian Rap Day will continue later on. Terry was on, I can't remember what show, we were doing some show, and I was talking to his agent, and I said, is that a showbiz thing? Is that, one of those rock star shy retiring, oh yeah, I don't really want to talk about the album things, or is he really like that? And your agent or manager or whatever, he said, no, he's really like that. I said, because I found it quite frustrating. Sometimes I'd speak to him and you wouldn't know if he was going to answer at all, or even, at best you'd get a yes, and he just exploded and he went, would you imagine what it's like for me? I've had 15 years of this. And I think it was a really cathartic thing for him to say. I suspect normally people would say, oh yeah, Terry's a quiet fella, but he just sort of went nuts. It was like the real pressure cooker effect.
Yes.
I knew you weren't going to comment too much on that. You have to answer for Terry. So Terry, how long have you had these Labradors? 7 years, that's interesting. And how many awards have they won? 4 rosettes, fantastic. I'm going to speak to Mushtaq, who's hungover, so he's going to do some sort of Terry Hall impression, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Yes, there you go. Mark, have you got anything to say about the album?
Yeah, I have. I thought it starts off with a real sort of
it's happened to you now.
It's contagious.
It's that side
I don't know,
of the
it's
table.
unlike it, but
with a kick.
It started
with a kick.
I'm trying to think of something to say just to fill the gap. This is radio.
It's a lovely album, and it's very. That's as far as I've got.
Right, I've got a question.
I had something there. Go on.
All right. Now there's one.
You're listening to Aberystwyth College Radio.
There's one track
with no guests.
Gather installed. have I interpreted this right? Is that a sort of because obviously there's a sort of sense of being against the American imperialism and so on. That's a sort of thing that runs through it.
Yeah,
all. Right.
Can we not talk about Labradors?
Well, that's what I was going to come on to.
And how's that affected?
But one of the tracks seems to be having a go at the anti-war movement.
No, not at all. I'm not sure which.
The Gathering Storm one.
No, not at all.
See, the thing is with Terry, sometimes he just forgets.
Questioning maybe, but
sometimes he doesn't put the word "not" in things because it's just too much effort. So you sometimes miss the whole point. Tell us about the album, how you two met and everything, because it's a very different. It's a departure, I think, for both of you.
Yeah. How did we meet? We met about 18 months ago and just got together through our publishers and just trying to work out what we're going to do next. And within about a month, we thought it'd be great to pursue this thing, an album. And we were just sort of playing records. We were playing sort of Jewish melody records and Arabic records, and we just wanted to take that route and sort of mix it all up a bit. Do you know what I mean? Just mix up all these influences we were listening to and let it happen.
It's such a big mixture. I'd imagine it's quite scary. I was quite scared at the first track because I knew you were coming on, and I thought, well, you always play through an album. What am I going to play on the show and stuff? And the first track is so. It's a very out there track, and it's a sort of a set of rhythms I'm not accustomed to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's quite a dangerous thing to do on your first track, isn't it?
Well, we thought it was a good idea to have that as a first track. It just sort of...
So the faint-hearted leave.
Well, almost, but to go against the idea of that normal format that you'd sort of traditionally... Well, I grew up with, because you're listening a lot to what people say would be good on radio, what would be good for TV, and just to break against that a bit and not think about choruses and just let it happen, really.
So have you done that before? Have you made an album that you thought... Because it obviously stands as an album, and it's actually quite nice to play as an album.
Yeah.
Rather than, just playing the singles off an album or whatever, which people normally do when they get an album.
But without... getting sort of conceptual, that's the way I used to do stuff, maybe with the Fun Boy 3 and stuff. It was like as an entire thing rather than worrying about what's going to be a single, because that is just such a stupid worry. I mean, I don't think it exists now anyway.
I think in your sort of career, probably both of you, an Nezio and Atomic Kitten style thing, or Daniel Bedingfield or one of these pinheads, it doesn't really matter, does it? What if a single happens?
No, not at all. We haven't got a single on this album, which is great, which sort of opens it up.
The intonation was slightly off there. It says like we haven't got a single on the album, which is great.
Yeah, no, it's great though.
I know what you're saying. Anyway, let's. We've probably confused people talking about the album. We should probably have heard a bit of it first, and that's my fault. This is my favourite, I think. It's called 1011. Very Tom Waitsy, this one, the opening.
Yeah.
That was 1011 from the new Terry Hall and Mushtaq album, which is called The Hour of Two Lights, in the shops now. Well, not in all of them, but
in record shops.
In record shops, yeah, at least. At the very least, you'd hope for that. That was...
pound shops in about 3 months.
Woolworths in 2.
Yeah.
That was Damon Albarn, wasn't it?
He sang in the middle, yeah.
Right. But was he doing some harmonies with you on there? Doing some backing
on the sort of outro, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did the whole thing actually come together? We've spoken about how you met, but because the sound it's all people who've never recorded before. Generally, that isn't it? The band.
I don't know. There are sort of, I know that, for example, a band like Romany Rad, who are Polish gypsies seeking asylum here. They've been here for 9 years, and they got sort of driven out of Poland, and they weren't allowed in studios and stuff, and we just invited people down to play. There was no sort of... We had a rough idea. We worked for about 6 months, 8 months, on sort of structures on songs and stuff. But we just invited a lot of people down to play across the tracks and, mix it all up, really.
But how do you find those sort of people in the first place?
Well, Romany Rad, for example, I sort of contacted an asylum agency in Dover. And it
just saying, have you got any gypsy violinists?
Well, I sort of saw a gypsy band playing in Carnaby Street, and I kept following them, and not all day, but sort of like listening to them and wanting to join their band, and I didn't think that was appropriate. Really, it didn't feel right to say, "Can I sing with you?"
No,
I wanted to.
But then, how do you share the money? You're going to feel bad about that, surely, at the end of the day.
Well, I could have held the tambourine out at the end, but it's like. Just a desire to play with people sort of playing sort of on a sort of street level, really. It's a bit rough and ready.
Yeah.
But because the idea of like putting an album together, there are no real reference points apart from this whole big sort of West Country world music thing, and we wanted to work against that a bit. We didn't want to go to an agency that has the best flute player in the world. We just wanted to find people as and when, really.
Mushtaq?
Everything he said twice.
God, you're like an interpreter for him. This is incredible.
No, it's true. It's true, actually. Basically, a lot of the musicians from the Middle East were kind of friends and colleagues that I met over dinner in Edgware Road. Cabaret musician. No. Really, we got some amazing musicians.
But when you're in Fundamental, you were always doing benefits for those sort of causes. So did you come across people then with other bands in the lineups and stuff?
I think it was an evolution of that database. It wasn't. I didn't really go out to use any people that played on Fundamental Records, but I think it was slightly different in that sense because this was more of a kind of wider album musically. So a lot of the tracks, even when we were writing them, we knew kind of what it needed. Like, this definitely needs a flute player, or this track needs a violin, a Eastern European gypsy violin. Do you know what I mean? The tracks kind of dictated us rather than us dictating the tracks, even at writing stages. But a lot of the musicians were kind of people that I've known quite for a long time and respected as musicians, and I always wanted them to do something with them. Do you know what I mean? It was a perfect opportunity, as the album was a platform for those people, as far as I'm concerned.
But it's such a strange mixture of sounds. I just wondered how you chose which, because it is to me it reminded me a lot, or some of it certainly reminded me of what I think North African music is, and I know nothing about that. I just know that's the sort of basic sound of it. Some of it sounds sort of Eastern European or whatever.
Well,
None of it sounds like what either of you have ever done in the past.
No, well, it's bits and bobs. I mean, they sort of referenced it, but it's like I bought a Jewish melody album in '82 or something, and always wanted to use bits of it in what I did, but never quite integrated, really. Do you know what I mean? Never quite worked. And I think you just got to go out there and open it all up, and that's what we did.
Did you find one thing I found about the album, and did you find this on your sort of journey towards the album, that we're so brought up on that rock beat or whatever, you know, or if you live in Britain, you're always going to grow up with that sort of four to the bar rock, whatever. Even like rap records and reggae records at the moment, particularly reggae. Reggae's so big at the moment because they're just using rap backings rather than reggae backings and whatever. Did you find that just a sort of non-understanding of it when you first were listening to, say, you know, a Jewish album or whatever?
Not really. It's sort of like it's something that I'm sort of quite familiar with. But one thing we tried to do at early stage was to try and keep sort of instruments that we've worked with off, like guitars, keyboards, drums, bass. If you're just trying to avoid all that lot, and then see what else, what there is.
That is, again, I mean, because that track 1011 reminded me very strongly of Tom Waits, because he does a lot of those sort of accordion doom, sort of, they feel like shanties because he always sings them as shanties. But he does exactly that as well. I mean, although he does use traditional
it was a bit
rock
like
instruments.
well, it's a bit like Playtime, really. And the only time I've ever done that before is the first Funboy 3 album, where we sort of had an idea what we wanted, and you just hire in loads of instruments and try and play them like finger pianos. I mean, it's like I played banjo on this, one string at a time, one note at a time.
Didn't you find it amazing when the Funboy 3 were, you know, a really big band, but their sound was really, really out there?
Yeah.
And in retrospectively, obviously you'd come from another massive band, but it's really odd to ever think that sort of weird harmonies and stuff you were doing, which was so, again, out of everyone's frame of reference, were like massive chart hits.
Well, I thought that's, especially with It Ain't What You Do, It's the Way You Do It, because on the surface it's a bit of a sing-along with Bananarama, and it's a bit, but underneath musically it's very, very odd. I mean, you know, it's out of tune. It really is. It's like
dissonance.
Yeah.
Right. We're gonna talk to Terry and Mushtaq some more after this. 88 to 91 FM. This is Radio 2 from the BBC. That was the Pyramid. Sorry, Simmerip with Skinhead Moonstomp. It is the Pyramids, but anyway. And before that was, I've forgotten his name, Danny Livingston, of course, with Rudy MSSU. Completely coincidentally, two songs that Terry covered back in a different lifestyle. And they're both on the album One Step Beyond, 45 Classic Ska Hits. You've probably seen the adverts on the television. And if you sort of want a ska album with all the hits and stuff on, that'll be the one to get.
Well, the brilliant thing about that is it's two CDs, isn't it? The first one is the stuff from the 60s, and the second CD is mostly the Madness Beat Specials sort of era.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's actually quite interesting for those of us who first heard it from the Specials, Madness Beat and everything, to hear the original versions and go, oh, it wasn't just a tribute, it was a complete wholesale take from. You know, a lot of the time when you hear some of the tracks and you go, they've used exactly that melody all the way through and called it something else.
There must be people who've heard the Dandy Livingston.
Not that you did that yourself, Terry, but I'm sure people around you, I'm sure you saw it happening every now and again. How did either of you, I've been struggling with this, how did either of you get into bands in the first place? Because neither of you seem like pushy people.
Well,
and you particularly, I don't know Mushtaq at all,
right.
But I know you're little. You don't seem, like a sort of person. You seem like a sort of person who could sit around for a long time. I may be completely wrong about that. But I don't know how you've ever gotten, right, I'm going to form a band, I'm going to do lead vocals, I'm going to write songs and whatever.
And I'm going to show off.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happens either. But it's since I was 17, it's all I've really wanted to do, and it's just a question of doing it when you can, really. And there's maybe a 2-year gap in between albums. But it's what I do, really. But
are you working on them during that time? Because your career, like I was mentioning before you came on, it's just been highlight after highlight. But very lethargically, there's been like long gaps between those highlights. But everything you've done's been good.
Well,
I mean,
just think
there's probably nothing you've done you've been embarrassed about retrospectively, is there?
No, two things. But
but now all I want to know is what they are.
No, there was an album called Terry Blair and Anushka that was very weird. Not embarrassed about, but not great either. But no, I just think it's like
that's one.
It's that, and the other one was the second Colourfield album, which
Oh, I remember the first one. I don't remember the second one.
First one was, I don't remember the second one, but
But that's not bad as too embarrassing, because normally someone been around as long as you. The embarrassing thing was the Weetabix
but
advert.
it's like losing interest, and that's why I think a gap's important. Because the second Colourfield album, I went straight into it after the first one because my record label said you've got to go to New York and use Cameo's programmer, and I thought, okay, I'll go. But I didn't spend any time in the studio. I went in about 10 o'clock at night, and session musicians passed me on the stairs who'd just done Raquel Welch, and then they'd just done me, and it was that kind of album, really.
But you have been very good. I mean, sometimes probably you need those things to kick you into action, but you've been very good at walking away from things.
Well, I think, I don't look at it as a career or a big thing. It's not like Fame Academy for me. It's just a part of everyday life, really. It's what I do. To me, making a record is like mowing the lawn, or it's just a part of what you do during the day, really. I don't look at it as a job, or it's part of what I do.
But was you aware of the impact, like at the peak of the Specials time? It was enormous impact of people that were sort of teenagers at the time.
It was weird because only when we started playing abroad, it was like here you just sort of grow up with it, and you go, you do pubs, and then you do clubs, and then you do halls. But when especially when we went to New York, and it was like 10,000 people, and you think, wow, this has got much bigger than...
It wasn't just the musical impact, like the social impact of like Ghost Town and...
Yeah, you are aware, but it's also you sow in your own little life, really, and it's...
I would have thought the same with Mushtaq, that on a smaller scale, because there wasn't that sort of, massive number ones and everything. But I remember when Fundamental first happened, and it must have been amazing for the Asian audiences more so, but just going, wow, really strong, angry... British Public Enemy types talking about those issues. That must have been quite... I mean, you must have been aware that was happening for the first time as well.
I think that it's evident, really, on stage. When you're on stage and you've got that kind of mass out there that have come to see your show, do you know what I mean? It's really evident that there is a following out there. But again, when you're in your little microcosm, just doing day-to-day things like interviews and shows and recording pressure as well, I think you're kind of like, most of the time you're consumed with that.
Right.
But it's not, I mean, Fundamental wasn't like, going out your house to get a bottle of milk and you get hounded by...
No, of course, no.
But it's a big impact, because we've got a white audience quite quickly as well.
Because I saw you live many, many times, and this is a great compliment. I was really intimidated the first few times. Just the power, just the same as I would have been had I seen Public Enemy as a teenager or something. Just that power on stage and that sort of vociferousness and anger is a really incredible thing to watch.
Yeah,
it was intimidating to watch, which is really joyful in a gig context.
It was angry music, but it was relevant to us. Do you know what I mean? As young people growing up in London, up north in Bradford, there were issues. For me personally, it was the only way to address those issues through an outlet on stage. It was either that or smash up cars or something. Do you know what I mean?
The exciting thing, which is like, it was all like as it was with Terry or with Public Enemy or whatever, or with Punk, you just thought, whether or not I agree with every letter of this, these people mean it, and that was just that's what was so exciting about it. And I was sampling the samples you use at the start of those tracks and stuff.
Sure.
God, these people mean it, and they're cross. That's all right, I'll go with that.
I think probably all those little kids in the charts, they mean it, but they don't really think very deeply.
You think Britney, you listen to Britney and you think, no, she really does feel that whoop, she's gone.
No, she has done it. She's like, I've gone through my life, I'm a clumsy fool. Oh, I've done it again.
Gone and done it again.
Have I ever told you
if only someone had just hit me one more time.
Have I told you the famous Reg Presley story when he sings at Sting's wedding? No. He somehow, because Sting lives in Wiltshire, doesn't he, and obviously the Trogs from Andover and whatever. So Reg Presley goes to sing at Sting's wedding, and before it, Sting's got a studio in his mansion there, which there's no point for that, but he has. And so he brings Terry Hall, not Terry Hall, sorry. Yeah, you were just staring at me in a Reg Presley fashion, a little bit gormless. So it's my fault, I'm blaming it on you. So he brings Reg Presley in and he plays him a few of his new tracks that he's just recorded. And at the end of it, Reg Presley goes, "That was bloody good, that. Who was that then?" And Sting gives him a withering look, for like, "You buffoon." And Reg Presley turns to his mate and he goes, I've bloody done it again, and and I think that's how Britney goes through her life. So I think you've been maligning her. Anyway, let's hear another track from the album. It's been about half an hour since we heard the last one. I'm sorry about that. This is, I think, The Silent Whale. It's very hard to work out some of the titles and some of them, isn't it? And I've only had this a week, and I'm not really that accustomed to it. But I think it's a silent. No point answering yet, Terry, because I haven't played it. You won't know.
I'm sure it is.
Okay. Anyway, this is
Silent Whales on the back of the cover.
Yeah, no, but
what you do is you just go 1, 2, 3, 4,
numbers.
5, 6.
Have you not got one of those ID CD things that tells you the titles?
No.
No?
No, this is BBC.
Come on, man, get it together, man.
All right, I'll get completely new equipment in next time you both come on. This is, I think, The Silent Whale. Let's see. Is this it? All right. Terry Hall and Mushtaq with The Silent Whale from the album The Hour of Two Lights. I kept thinking it was The House of Two Lights because there's an old song called The House of Blue Lights and I was getting mixed up there.
Right.
So I apologise for
That's
that.
okay.
I could have done all that in my head without it coming out. I apologise, but I'm not like you, Terry.
No.
If there's a thought there, it's out.
It's out.
Share it with people. They might not want it, but at least give them the option. I'm pro-choice. Anyway, good luck with the
Cheers.
album. Have you both it must be quite hard to sequence an album like this because it really does work as an album, and I think I've played obviously the sort of two radio friendly and most westernised, as it were, tracks from the album. But it is very much a sort of a mood piece, as it were.
Well, very, very early on, what we did was sequence the album. We found the start, we found the end, and we found the middle, and it really was slotting things around it. Again, it's like we didn't think about singles, radio. We just wanted to do this, try and cram everything into this one album. But I think you have to sequence it to make sense for us, really. Yeah.
Are you one for listening to your own stuff?
Not really. I only ever listen to it when I do stuff like this and you play it.
Right.
So how much is it affected by the times, though, the two of you getting together with all sort of post-Twin Towers and the war in Iraq and all that? It must be...
Not at all, really. It really wasn't, but it's sort of an unhappy coincidence, really.
There, and on that pause, I think we should say goodbye to the pair of you. It's been lovely having you both in. Thank you very much for
I just
sharing your visions with us
Could I
this morning.
just say happy anniversary to Mick and Tammy? I just needed to say that.
Yeah.
That was the last thing.
That saved you 8 pence on a local call, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Cherry. Thank you, Mushtaq, and good luck with the album. And you're doing some gig at some point, aren't you?
End of September, we're doing a concert in London. We haven't got the venue yet.
Or the band?
All the band.
We know what we've got to do, but we've just got to do it.
You've got each other's phone number?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's going to make that call first?
Mushtaq.
Yes, I'd imagine so. who's I think, hungover this morning, I think it's fair to say, and that's hence the... You've been quite quiet. Have you not noticed that?
No, I've just been educated by conversation and history and atmosphere.
And the need to plug the gig, end of September somewhere or other.
Well
that
done,
we've got
Mark.
people.
Yeah, I think you better follow
It'll be
them
in London.
around and be their agent on future radio interviews. The album's in the shops now, some of them, obviously, blah, blah, blah. This is House of Pain.